My parents went silent for a week. When I reached their home, the place was destroyed. I almost called the cops until a sound came from the closet that made my blood run cold. Can you imagine the chilling weight of silence from your family, only to finally break into their house and find your little nephew, terrified and starving, hidden in a dark wardrobe? I'm telling you, in that moment, when his tiny body collapsed into my arms and his silence screamed a truth more horrifying than I could ever have imagined, my whole world shattered. My name is Jackson Palmer, and I'm 31 years old. Right now, I manage a bustling hotel here in Las Vegas, the city of fleeting dreams. From the outside, my life looks solid. A good job, a tidy apartment, a schedule packed enough to keep me from overthinking. But if you ask me about my family, about my childhood memories back in Reno, that's a completely different story. It's a story filled with deep cracks, lingering pain, and a love that's been stretched so thin it almost broke. Reno, nestled among Nevada's mountains, was a small town where everyone knew everyone, and life moved at a slow, almost unchanging pace. My parents, Joseph and Marilyn, were typical small-town folk, hardworking, simple. Our family store, Palmer's Grocery, was my whole world. I grew up behind that counter, bagging groceries, restocking cans of soup. It was modest, weathered, with a faded wooden sign and the mingled scent of fresh bread and old wood. I loved that place, not because it was special, but because it was ours. Our two-story house, just a few blocks from the store, had a front yard full of weeds and an old oak tree I used to climb every summer. That's where I learned to tie my shoes, heard my mother's lullabies, and witnessed both my parents' smiles and their tears. But don't picture a perfectly happy family. Beneath the moments of warmth, a shadow always loomed. Dylan, my younger brother, 5 years my junior. From a young age, Dylan was the absolute center of attention. My mother called him her golden boy, with his curly hair and sparkling eyes. Dylan had a smile that could melt anyone, and my parents, especially Mom, couldn't resist him. They spoiled him rotten, giving him new toys, nice clothes, and instant forgiveness for every mistake. Meanwhile, as the older son, I was expected to be mature, responsible. Dylan got to live carefree, as if his missteps were just harmless pranks. I don't blame my parents. I know they loved both of us, just differently. I remember cleaning up the store in the evenings while Dylan was off getting ice cream with Mom. Or the times I get scolded for breaking a glass while Dylan could spill an entire tray of pastries and just get a pat on the head. Those small things, piling up year after year, pushed Dylan and me apart. We grew up like parallel lines, living under the same roof but never truly connecting. When I turned 18, I fled Reno for college in Las Vegas. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe, live for myself. I studied business, landed a good job, and built a new life. But every time I went back to Reno, a heavy dread settled over me. Dylan, now a teenager, was changing. His angelic childhood smile was now tinged with defiance, recklessness. He started skipping school, hanging out with a bad crowd. And then, like an inevitable storm, he fell into gambling. Gambling in Nevada is everywhere, but for Dylan, it wasn't just a pastime. It was a devastating addiction. I'll never forget the first time my mother called, her voice trembling, telling me Dylan had stolen money from the store safe to gamble. I drove back that night to find my father silently staring, my mother sobbing in the kitchen. Dylan, meanwhile, just shrugged and said, "I'll pay it back. No big deal." But I knew he wouldn't. He never did. The debts piled up, and Dylan sank deeper. He married a woman named Sutton, someone I foolishly hoped might pull him out of the abyss. But their marriage lasted less than 2 years. Sutton left, leaving Dylan and their young son Jaden, who was only 3. Instead of stepping up, Dylan abandoned Jaden, leaving him with my parents while he drifted like a ghost, showing up occasionally to beg for money, cause trouble, and then disappear again. Jaden, now 6, is the one fragile light in our fractured family. Every time I visit Reno, I spend time with him, telling stories, or just sitting on the porch. He has Dylan's eyes from when he was young, but far more innocent, more pure. He calls me Uncle Jack and hugs me tight whenever I leave. But even Jaden couldn't erase the growing distance between me and my parents. Our relationship had been fractured for a long time. It's not that I don't love them, I do deeply. But their relentless favoritism toward Dylan and the burdens they placed on me whenever he messed up had worn me down. Every time Mom called, I braced myself for another rant about Dylan, his debts, his troublemaking. Each call left me drained, helpless. Last month, Mom called more frequently than usual. Her voice was frail, laced with raw worry. "Dylan came by again," she whispered. He demanded money and brought some strangers with him. I don't know what to do. I told her to call the police, but she just sighed. "He's my son. I can't do that." I hung up, my heart heavy. I knew she wouldn't. She never did. I thought about going back, confronting Dylan, even bringing Jaden to live with me. But work swept me away, and I told myself everything would be fine, that my parents could handle it. I was wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. For the past week, a cold unease had been creeping into my heart, like a winter wind blowing through the blazing Las Vegas summer. It started with unanswered calls. I called Mom, then Dad, but all I got was endless ringing, echoing in an empty void. Texts went unanswered. "Mom, are you okay? Dad, what are you up to? How's Jaden?" My phone's screen remained silent. Not a single reply. At first, I reassured myself. Busy at the store, phones died. But as the third day passed, then the fifth, that unease turned into a raging storm in my chest. Every night, as the neon lights flickered outside my window, I clutched my phone, scrolling through unanswered messages, my heart heavy. I thought of Dad, his quiet exhaustion and steadfast patience. I thought of Mom, her gentle smile, her voice growing weaker every time she mentioned Dylan. And then Jaden, the 6-year-old with big, round eyes, probably clutching his worn teddy bear in that Reno house. What was going on? Dylan wasn't just asking for money anymore. He was aggressive, reckless. Mom said he'd show up at odd hours, even in the middle of the night, banging on the door, yelling for money. Once, he even threatened to make a big deal if they didn't comply. I wanted to race back, grab him by the collar, and scream. But I held back, telling myself I couldn't keep cleaning up his messes forever. My biggest mistake was thinking I could stay on the sidelines, that I could let my parents face the storm named Dylan alone. By the 7th day, with still no response, a call from an unfamiliar number made my heart pound. It was Mrs. Helen, the neighbor across from my parents' door. Her voice was frantic, laced with worry. "Jackson, your parents' store has been closed all week. No one's seen them. Something's not right." The blood in my veins turned to ice. The grocery store, where my parents had poured their lives, had never been closed this long. For it to be shuttered for a whole week was unimaginable. My hands trembled. Maybe they're sick. Maybe a trip. Deep down, I knew those were just excuses. Had he pushed them into a situation they couldn't escape? I couldn't sit still any longer. That evening, I called my boss, requesting emergency leave. "I need to go home. It's urgent," I choked out. He just nodded, told me to be careful. I tossed a few clothes into a suitcase, glancing out at the oblivious Las Vegas lights. A 7-hour drive to Reno lay ahead. I knew this trip wasn't just about finding my parents. It was about facing everything I'd avoided for years. Childhood memories flooded back. Afternoons behind the counter, Mom slipping me a peppermint, Dylan and me playing tag between the aisles. But those warm memories couldn't ease the dread suffocating my chest. Every dark stretch of road, I saw Dylan's image, not the laughing child, but the Dylan of now, with cold eyes, harsh voice, and the threats Mom had described. What had happened in that house? Were my parents truly okay? Or was something far worse waiting for me? My fear grew with every mile, a stone weighing heavier on my heart. "Jackson, you've abandoned them for too long," a whisper in my head accused. I pressed the gas. The 7-hour drive felt like a lifetime. When the town's welcome sign came into view, my chest tightened. Reno looked the same, but something felt off, like the air itself carried a warning. I drove straight to the grocery store, a place I always pictured vibrant. But it was completely shuttered, the faded wooden sign tilted as if weary. Through the window, only darkness. My heart raced. They would never close the store this long. Never. Unless. I didn't dare finish the thought. I drove toward their house. The familiar road that once led through carefree summer days now seemed endless. Every street corner, every old oak tree, stirred memories that only deepened my unease. I didn't want to know what I was about to face, but a bad feeling clung to me like a shadow. When I pulled up to the familiar two-story house, my heart seemed to stop. Pitch black. Not a single light. Not a sound. The front door was slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. My legs heavy as lead. Each step felt like it was leading me toward an abyss. Dad? Mom? Jaden? I called, but only the cold, lifeless wind answered. I pushed the door open, and the sight before me hit like a punch to the chest. The house, once filled with laughter and the smell of Mom's cookies, was a wreck. Furniture toppled. Kitchen cabinet doors hung open, dishes scattered, some shattered. A long crack ran across the wall. Dad's proudly built wooden chair lay broken. Everything screamed chaos. This house had witnessed a battle. I stood there, blood in my veins turning to ice. Dad! Mom! I called again, my voice thick, but the heavy silence enveloped me. I tripped over a spoon. Each step twisted a knife in my heart. No one would leave the house like this by accident. Not Dad, who kept everything orderly. Not Mom, who polished floors until they gleamed. And certainly not Jaden, the careful little boy who cherished everything. I tried to find a rational explanation. Robbed, fled in panic, or something I didn't dare imagine. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. I needed to find them. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police. At that moment, a faint sound came from the end of the hallway, from my parents' bedroom. A shaky, labored breath, mixed with soft, stifled sobs, like a small, wounded animal trying to hide. My heart pounded, blood rushing to my ears. I froze, listening. Then it came again, clearer, more desperate. I moved toward the bedroom, my legs trembling. The bedroom door was ajar. As I pushed it open, a musty smell and cold silence hit me. The bed was disheveled but untouched. Jaden! I called, my voice breaking. Is that you? Where are you? No reply. Only the labored breathing, clearer now, coming from the corner of the room. It led me to the old wardrobe, its door slightly open. My hand shook as I reached for the handle, sweat beading on my forehead. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. It's gonna be okay, Jackson, I whispered, but deep down I knew nothing was okay. The wardrobe door creaked sharply as I pulled it open. Darkness swallowed the faint hallway light. But then, amid the jumble of clothes, I saw a small figure curled up in the corner. My eyes strained to adjust. When the light finally fell on it, I froze. It was Jaden, my 6-year-old nephew. He sat huddled, clutching the tattered teddy bear Mom had given him. His clothes were crumpled, filthy, his hair matted, his face gaunt, pale, as if hunger had drained the life out of him. But what shattered my heart were his eyes, red-rimmed, wide open, gleaming with a fear I'd never seen in a child. He wasn't crying loudly, just soft, choked sobs, as if he'd cried so much he had no strength left. Jaden! I called, my voice breaking, barely recognizable. I knelt, reaching out, but he flinched, shrinking deeper into the corner as if I were a threat. The teddy bear was clutched so tightly I feared it might tear. Jaden! It's Uncle Jack. You're safe now, I said, voice trembling, trying to stay calm even though my heart was screaming. But Jaden didn't respond. He just stared, panicked eyes searching for something to trust. Slowly I reached out again, gently touching his shoulder. He didn't pull away, but his body shook violently, like a dry leaf in a cold wind. What happened? Where are Grandma and Grandpa? I asked, my voice catching, fighting back tears. I needed to know. I needed to understand why the house was in ruins, why my parents weren't here, why Jaden was hiding like a wounded animal. But Jaden said nothing. He just stared, red eyes wide. Then, as if his last bit of strength had given out, he collapsed into my arms. His small body felt weightless, so frail. I was afraid a tight hug might break him. I held him close, feeling his rapid breaths against my shoulder. In that moment, a pain deeper than anything I'd ever known washed over me. This boy, my beloved nephew, had endured something horrific. And I, the one who should have protected him, hadn't been there. I lifted Jaden, limp in my arms. It's okay. I'm here now, I whispered, unsure if I was comforting him or myself. I scanned the room again, hoping for any sign of my parents, a note, a clue, anything. But there was only silence and chaos. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like an abandoned battlefield. I couldn't stay. Jaden needed help. I had to get him out of this place. I carried him to the car, laid him on the back seat, and wrapped him in a thin blanket I found. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling faintly as if clinging to life. I jumped into the driver's seat, started the car, and sped toward the nearest hospital, my heart pounding as if it might burst. The 10-minute drive felt like a century. I kept glancing at Jaden in the rearview mirror, terrified he might slip away completely. "Hang on, buddy," I muttered, my voice breaking. "I won't let anything happen to you." But in my mind, questions swirled like sharp blades. Where were my parents? What had happened in that house? When I pulled up to the emergency room, I practically shouted for the nurses. "Help my nephew! He's not okay!" A team rushed over, wheeling a stretcher. They gently lifted Jaden, and I stood there helpless as they whisked him inside. A nurse, her eyes filled with concern, but professional, asked about Jaden's condition. I could only shake my head. I don't know. I just found him in a wardrobe. He hasn't said anything. Please, save him. Inside, doctors worked quickly. They hooked Jaden up 2 and 4, checked his heart rate, measured his blood pressure. I watched through the small window, Jaden lying there, so small and fragile, like a bird with broken wings. A doctor emerged, his face grave. "The boy is severely dehydrated and malnourished, likely from days without food or water. He's also experiencing significant psychological trauma. We'll keep him here for observation. But can you tell us anything about what happened?" I shook my head, overwhelmed. "I don't know," I whispered. "I just got home and found it like that." Deep down, I knew I couldn't stop here. Jaden had survived, but what about my parents? The wrecked house, the signs of violence, the eerie silence. I clenched my fists, anger and pain surging like a fire. I had to go back to that house. I called a friend from the hotel, asking him to cover my work. "I don't know how long this will take," I said, my voice hollow. He didn't ask questions, just told me to be careful. I hung up, feeling like I was severing a piece of my normal life to step into a nightmare with no end in sight. Back in the car, I drove to my parents' house. The Reno night was cold, the faint moonlight casting an eerie glow on the familiar streets, making them feel alien. Inside, I moved carefully, not touching anything. The house was as I'd left it. Furniture toppled, dishes shattered, the crack on the wall a grim reminder. I stood in the living room, breathing in the heavy air, searching for any clue. In the kitchen, I spotted a family photo frame on the floor, glass cracked. My heart clenched at the sight of my parents' smiles, mine, and even Dylan's from when we were kids. A photo from a summer day, before everything fell apart. My hands trembling, I dialed 911. "I need to report a missing persons case," I said. "My parents. They're not home, and my nephew. I found him in critical condition. The house, it's been ransacked. Please come. Quickly." My voice choked, each word wrenched from deep inside my chest. They told me to wait. I sat on the old sofa, trying to stay calm. Dad's jacket hung on the coat rack, but its pockets were empty. A cold cup of coffee sat on the kitchen table. Everything in the house seemed to tell a story, but I couldn't decipher it. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside. 3 officers stepped inside, followed by a man in plain clothes, a detective. "Are you Jackson Palmer?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I nodded. "I'm Detective Matthew. Tell us what you know." I led them through the house, showing them the broken chairs, shattered dishes, the crack on the wall. I told them about not reaching my parents for a week, Mrs. Helen's call, and finding Jaden. Each word felt like a stab, but I forced myself to keep going. Matthew took careful notes, his eyes sharp, but non-judgmental. "We'll look into everything," he said. "But first we need to secure the scene." Officers cordoned off the house with yellow tape. Neighbors started to gather. Whispers floated through the crowd. "I heard arguing last week," an elderly woman, Mrs. Carter, told an officer. "Loud shouting." Another man, Mr. Thompson, chimed in. "I saw Dylan around here a few times. He was with some rough-looking guys. Once I saw them standing outside the store, like they were watching something. Each word hit me like a hammer. Dylan. His name kept coming up, a tragic refrain. I wanted to scream, to demand answers from every neighbor. But I knew I had to stay calm. The police needed me clear-headed, and Jaden needed me strong. Still, deep inside, a fear was growing like a snarling beast. If Dylan was involved, if he had done something to my parents, I didn't know how I'd face that truth. Matthew called me over, asking more questions about Dylan, his habits, where he usually went. I told him everything, though each word felt like rubbing salt in a wound. He's addicted to gambling, I said. He shows up to ask for money. Mom always forgave him. Matthew nodded. We'll start looking into this angle, he said. But you should prepare yourself. This might not be a simple missing persons case. His words sent a shiver through me. I wanted to believe my parents were okay, that this was all a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew the truth was waiting, and it wouldn't be easy. I turned away, heading back to the hospital. I needed to be with Jaden. He looked slightly better, no longer deathly pale, but his eyes still carried a haunting shadow. It's Uncle Jack, I whispered, gently touching his hand. You're okay now. Jaden opened his eyes, those big, round, red-rimmed eyes, locking onto mine. Then, as if a dam of fear had broken, he burst into wrenching sobs. His cries were raw, desperate, as if he'd been holding them in for too long. He reached out, clinging to me, his fingers gripping my shirt as if afraid I'd vanish. Uncle Jax, don't go, he whispered, his voice trembling, faint, so fragile I had to fight not to break down with him. I'm right here, Jaden. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice catching. But deep down, I knew I was making a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. A doctor came in. He's more stable now, she said, her tone gentle but serious. But he suffered severe psychological trauma. We need time to assess him further, and it's best not to pressure him right now. I nodded, but my mind swirled with questions. Jaden knew something. He'd been in that house, seen something. And though I didn't want to push him, I needed the truth. Detective Matthew arrived shortly after with a female officer. They asked brief questions about Jaden's condition, then requested to speak with him. We'll be as gentle as possible, Matthew said. I know it's not the best time, but anything the boy can tell us might help find your parents. I looked at Jaden, still clinging to me, and felt like I was at a dangerous crossroads. I didn't want him to relive whatever had happened, but I also knew it was the only way. Jaden, I said, kneeling by the bed, keeping my voice as soft as possible. Can you help Uncle Jack a little? These people are police officers, and they want to find Grandma and Grandpa. Can you tell us what happened? Jaden shook his head frantically, his eyes wide with terror. He clutched his teddy bear tightly, his last shield. No, I don't want to, he whispered, quivering. I hugged him. I'm right here, Jaden. You don't have to be scared. Just tell us what you remember. Okay. I won't let anyone hurt you. I could feel his rapid breathing. I wanted nothing more than to take him away from all this pain. But I couldn't. I needed the truth, no matter how brutal. After a few minutes of my reassurance, Jaden began to speak, his voice halting, punctuated by sobs. Dad came to the house, he whispered, and my heart seemed to stop. Dad came with some other people. They were yelling. Grandma and Grandpa yelled back. Jaden paused, his eyes wide, reliving the moment. I held his hand, trying to keep my voice steady. Go on, buddy. What did they do? Jaden trembled, tears streaming. Dad, he was really mad. He shouted, told Grandma and Grandpa to give him money, but they wouldn't. Then there was a loud crash. Things broke. He stopped, clutching the teddy bear, his body shaking violently. I was scared. I ran to the wardrobe. I hid. His voice faded, sinking into a memory too heavy to bear. I heard Grandma and Grandpa cry out. Then everything went quiet. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I held Jaden tightly, fighting back tears. But inside, a storm was raging. Dylan. He was there. He fought with our parents. The sounds Jaden heard. I didn't dare think further. Matthew and the female officer took notes quickly, their expressions hardening. Do you remember anything about the people with your dad? The officer asked, gentle but careful. Jaden shook his head, tears spilling again. I don't know. They were tall. They were scary. Covered in tattoos, he broke into wrenching sobs, clinging to me. I knew he couldn't say more. I signaled to Matthew, and he nodded. "Thank you, Jaden," he said. "You're a brave boy. We have enough to start the investigation. Dylan will be our primary suspect." The doctor stepped in, gently asking everyone to leave so Jaden could rest. "The boy needs time," she said. "He's been through too much." I nodded, but inside I wanted to scream. Dylan, my brother, what had he done? What had he dragged our parents into? And Jaden, an innocent child, had witnessed it all. I sat by Jaden's bed, holding his hand until he fell asleep. His breathing finally steady, but I couldn't rest. Jaden's words were like a sharp puzzle piece, confirming my worst fears. Dylan hadn't just caused trouble. He might have done something unforgivable. Detective Matthew called me the next morning, his voice low and resolute. "We've designated Dylan as the primary suspect based on Jaden's statement. We're issuing a manhunt. Do you have any more information about your brother's habits?" I recounted what I knew: the casinos Dylan frequented, the seedy bars where he drank. Each word felt like a stab, but I couldn't stop. The police moved quickly. They went to the rundown motel room Dylan rented. But Matthew's voice was heavy with frustration when he called back. The room was empty. Trash strewn everywhere, clothes scattered like he left in a hurry. "We're collecting fingerprints and any clues." I pictured the chaotic mess, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes, a reflection of the person Dylan had become. He'd fled. He knew what he'd done. Meanwhile, I sat by Jaden's side, watching him sleep, his face still etched with fear. The doctor said he needed time, but every time he startled in his sleep, muttering incoherent words like, "Dad, don't," it felt like someone was squeezing my heart. I stroked his hair, whispering, "I'm here, Jaden. Everything's going to be okay." But I wasn't sure if I was comforting him or myself. The truth was, I didn't know if things would ever be okay again. A key lead came from a creditor named Eddie, a man the police tracked down at a small casino. Eddie, with a gravelly voice and cold eyes, said Dylan owed him tens of thousands from losing streaks. He begged me for more time, Eddie told Matthew. Said he was about to come into big money to pay it all off. Mentioned something about family taking care of it, but I didn't buy it. He looked like a desperate dog. Eddie's words hit me like a hammer. Family taking care of it. What did Dylan mean? Was he planning to get money from our parents, from the grocery store, or from something worse? The police issued a citywide manhunt, extending it to surrounding areas. News of the case spread like wildfire in the quiet town. Neighbors gathered outside my parents' house, whispering. Mrs. Carter visited me, and Jaden at the hospital, bringing cookies. "I can't believe this, Jackson," she said, trembling. Joseph and Marilyn were good people. And Dylan? I saw him with some shady characters. I was worried, but I never thought it would come to this. Her words only fueled the fire in my chest. I wanted to scream that I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to think my brother could do something so horrific. But the pieces were falling into place. Jaden's account, the wrecked house, the neighbor's stories, Eddie's words. They all pointed to Dylan like arrows aimed straight at my heart. I sat by Jaden, holding his small, cold fingers. He mumbled words like, "Dad, don't," or "I'm scared." Each whisper cut into me like a blade. I thought about the years Dylan was coddled, defended, forgiven. The times I tried to pull him out of his messes only for him to smirk and say, "Worry about yourself, Jax. I know how to live my life." Now, his way of living had led to this, a destroyed home, a traumatized child, our parents missing. Somewhere out there, Dylan was hiding, carrying secrets I both yearned and dreaded to uncover. I hoped the police would find him, drag him out of the shadows. But I also feared that moment when I faced him. What would I see? A criminal? A brother? Or a monster who had destroyed our family? Matthew called again late that night. "We're narrowing it down," he said, his voice firm. "New leads from the outskirts. We'll find him soon." I nodded, my voice hollow. I wasn't sure if I was truly ready to face Dylan. The next morning, Matthew called me back to the house. "Some findings from the investigation team. We need you to confirm a few details," he said, his voice carrying an odd tone, as if bracing himself. I drove over, heart pounding. Matthew was in the living room with another officer. The house remained erect, cold wound. "We found this," Matthew said, leading me to a corner, handing me a faded yellow envelope. My name was scrawled across it in Dad's handwriting. Jackson, it read. Just seeing it sent a chill down my spine. I opened it, pulling out a folded sheet of paper. The handwriting was shaky, as if written in panic or fear. I took a deep breath, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to read. Jackson, our son, the letter began. If you're reading this, things have probably gone too far. We're sorry for everything. We were wrong. So very wrong to let Dylan become what he is. We loved him, but we spoiled him too much, letting him grow into a selfish, broken man. We tried to fix it, but it might be too late. I stopped, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The words cut like a sharp, unrelenting knife. My parents had always defended Dylan, but hearing them admit their mistake in their own handwriting filled me with both pain and anger. I forced myself to read on, each line slicing deeper. Dylan has changed, Jackson. He's no longer the boy we knew. Lately, he's been coming to the house, often demanding money, threatening us. He talked about selling the grocery store, saying it was the only way to settle his debts. We refused, but he wouldn't stop. He brought strangers, men with cold eyes. We've been living in fear, Jackson. We're afraid of the day things go too far. Tears welled up, blurring the words. I thought I was prepared, but no. There was no way to brace for this. My parents had lived in fear, threatened by their own son, and they chose to keep it from me. A wave of anger surged at Dylan, at myself, and even at my parents for letting it come to this. The letter continued, Dad's handwriting growing heavier. We didn't want to drag you into this, Jackson. You've done so much for this family. Carried so much. We didn't want you to face Dylan, didn't want you caught up in this. But if you're reading this, we're probably gone. Take care of Jaden. He's innocent. And please forgive us if you can. I folded the letter, unable to read further. Hot tears fell on my cheeks. The words felt like a final testament, as if my parents knew a tragic end was coming. They'd been pushed to the edge by their own son, and they'd chosen to protect me. I gripped the letter, feeling it burn. Matthew stood beside me, his eyes softening. Dylan, I whispered, my voice breaking. His name now felt like a curse, an indelible stain. He'd driven our parents to the brink, and I could no longer stand on the sidelines. I handed the letter to Matthew. Keep it. It's evidence. He nodded, placing it in a clear plastic bag. But his eyes told me he understood this wasn't just evidence, but a piece of my family's tragedy. I returned to the hospital right after, unable to bear another second in that house. Jaden was still sleeping, his face less pale. The letter's words echoed in my mind, a reminder of my parents' mistakes and my own. I'd left them alone too long. But now I couldn't run anymore. Dylan had destroyed our family, and I had to face him. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Matthew. His voice was curt, but I could hear the tension. We found Dylan, he said. He's at a cheap motel. We've taken him into custody. Would you like to come to the station? My heart pounded, a mix of relief and dread. They'd found him. I left Jaden at the hospital, promising to return. He clutched my hand, his eyes still panicked, but I forced a smile. I'll be back soon, Jaden, I said, ruffling his hair. As I stepped out, I felt like I was walking into a storm. The Reno police station sat in the heart of town, a gray building with long corridors and the stale smell of old coffee. Matthew met me at the entrance, his expression stern but tinged with exhaustion. He's in the interrogation room, he said, leading me through a narrow hallway. He's rattled but still denying everything. We need you here to confirm some details. I nodded, wanting to turn and run, but I couldn't. Not now. The interrogation room was small, with a metal table and stiff chairs. Dylan sat there, facing Matthew and another officer. I stood behind the one-way glass, watching him. He looked haggard, a shadow of himself. His hair disheveled, shirt crumpled, bloodshot eyes suggesting days without sleep. In his hand was a small bag containing some cash and fake IDs. Clear signs he planned to flee. But what chilled me was his eyes. Panicked, yet still defiant, as if he thought he could escape. Matthew began, his voice calm but sharp. Dylan, we know you were at your parents' house last week. We have statements from your son, from neighbors, and from a creditor. What did you do? Dylan kept his head down, hands clasped tightly, but his mouth stayed stubborn. I just went to ask for money, he said. We argued, sure, but then I left. I didn't do anything. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms until they stung. He was lying. I knew it. Matthew knew it. The room itself seemed to know it. Matthew didn't flinch. He placed a stack of documents on the table, including my parents' letter and photos of the wrecked house. You sure about that, Dylan? He asked, his voice cold as steel. Jaden said you came with some men. You fought with your parents, and he heard things breaking, loud crashes. How do you explain that? Dylan shifted, eyes darting away. The kid's making it up, he muttered, but his voice trembled as if he knew he was losing ground. Matthew pressed on, his tone growing sharper. We also have a statement from Eddie, your creditor. He said you promised big money to pay off your debts. Where was that money coming from, Dylan? Your parents' store. Their house. I stood behind the glass, feeling the ground crumble beneath me. Each of Matthew's words was a puzzle piece, forming a horrifying picture. Dylan bowed his head, silent, but his shoulders trembled. He was breaking, and I both wanted to scream at him and run from what I was about to hear. Suddenly, Matthew's phone buzzed. He answered, his calm demeanor instantly changing. The room fell silent as he nodded a few times, then hung up. Matthew stood, his voice dropping, each word heavy like a hammer strike. Dylan, I just got a call. The crime scene team found the bodies of Joseph and Marilyn Palmer in a vacant lot not far from their house. Both were brutally attacked. Evidence at the scene matches what we found in the house and Jaden's statement. Do you have anything left to deny? I felt the world stop. Bodies. My parents. I gripped the chair's edge, my head spinning. Their letter, with its trembling words, now became an unbearable truth. I wanted to scream, to shatter the glass and grab Dylan, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, tears streaming down my face without me noticing. Dylan looked up, his face pale as death. No, it wasn't, he stammered, but his voice faltered. Matthew didn't give him a chance. He slid photos of the crime scene across the table on his phone. Images I knew I couldn't bear to see, but I knew they were real. Anything else to say, Dylan? Matthew asked, his voice now a razor's edge. Dylan broke down, his sobs echoing in the small room. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. And then, as if his last strength had drained away, he confessed. I didn't mean to, he said, his voice breaking. I just wanted money. I needed it to pay my debts, but they wouldn't give it to me. They yelled, called me a disgrace. I lost control. I hit them. I didn't know what I was doing until they were lying there, not moving. I felt my heart tear apart. Dylan, my brother, once Mom's golden boy, had beaten our parents to death. He continued, his voice trembling, trying to justify his crime. I panicked. I called some guys from the casino. We buried them in the lot. I thought if no one knew, I could sell the store or the house, pay off my debts, and start over. The room was stunned. Matthew kept his face stoic, but I saw his hand tighten around his pen. The officer beside him shook her head as if unable to believe it, and I just stood there, staring at Dylan through the glass. He was no longer my brother. He was the monster who killed our parents, left Jaden in terror, and destroyed everything our family had. I turned away, unable to look any longer. Tears streamed down my face. Rage and grief burned together in me, an unquenchable fire. I wanted to scream at Dylan, to demand why he could do this to our own family, but I knew no answer would ease this pain. Matthew stepped out, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Jackson, he said, his voice softer. We'll bring him to justice. You should prepare to identify your parents' bodies at the morgue. I nodded faintly, my heart empty. I didn't know how to face this loss. My parents were gone, and Dylan, the brother I once knew, had taken them from me. Dylan's trial took place just a few weeks later. I didn't attend. I couldn't face his face, couldn't hear his horrific confession again. Matthew updated me over the phone. Dylan was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, paying for the crime he committed. But that sentence didn't bring my parents back, didn't erase the painful memories Jaden carried, and didn't mend the cracks in my heart. I arranged my parents' funeral on a quiet afternoon in Reno. The small church our family used to attend was filled with people, Neighbors, friends, regular customers. Mrs. Carter held my hand, tears streaming. Joseph and Marilyn were good people, Jackson. They didn't deserve this. I could only nod, afraid I'd break down. The funeral was somber, with only the wind rustling through the cemetery's oak trees and the murmur of prayers. I stood before their graves, feeling like the world had collapsed. But I forced myself to be strong for Jaden. After the funeral, I took Jaden to live with me. Before my parents' graves, I knelt, placing my hand on the cold headstones. I promised to take care of Jaden like my own son, I whispered. I won't let him suffer anymore. The wind blew, carrying a strange sense as if my parents were listening, smiling from somewhere far away. I took Jaden's hand, leading him away from the cemetery. In that moment, I knew this was a promise I would keep at all costs. The first days in Las Vegas weren't easy. Jaden was still haunted. He woke up crying every night, calling for his grandparents. I held him close, singing the lullabies Mom used to sing, though my voice cracked with tears. I'm here, Jaden, I whispered. I won't leave you alone. I spent every spare moment with him, playing, telling stories, trying to bring some light back to his eyes, still shadowed by darkness. Slowly, with patience and love, Jaden began to smile again. His smiles were faint, but to me, they were like sunlight breaking through a storm. I decided to sell the grocery store and the house in Reno. Those places held too many painful memories. I couldn't keep them, couldn't let those memories continue to trap us. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to start a new life for Jaden and me. I moved us into a larger apartment in Las Vegas with a room just for him, where I hung his drawings and placed his worn teddy bear on the bed. In the months that followed, as Jaden and I settled into our new rhythm, I began to reflect on my family. My parents had made mistakes, spoiling Dylan too much, letting him become selfish and broken. Their favoritism left deep wounds, not just for me, but for them and Jaden too. But I also realized that despite our family's flaws and fractures, love and responsibility were the foundation that held us together. I learned a painful lesson. Blind indulgence and neglect can push a child down a destructive path, even to tragedy. But I also believed that with love and responsibility, I could save a life, Jaden's life. One evening, as the neon lights of Las Vegas lit up the sky, I held Jaden's hand, walking him down a bustling street. He pointed at the lights, giggling at a fountain that changed colors. I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I felt a stillness in my heart. No more nightmares. No more echoes of Dylan's shouts. No more painful memories of Reno. Just me and Jaden, uncle and nephew, walking together under the bright, hopeful glow of the city. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Jaden would still have nights when he woke crying, and I would carry the scars of what Dylan did. But I was determined to build a new family, one without violence, favoritism, or betrayal. A family built on love, where Jaden could grow up without fear. Where I could keep my promise to my parents and to myself. As we stopped by a fountain, Jaden looked up at me, his eyes sparkling. Uncle Jax, can I stay with you forever? He asked, his voice small but full of hope. I knelt down, hugged him, and smiled, though tears welled in my eyes. Forever, Jaden, I said. You and me. We're family. Our story closed under the radiant lights of Las Vegas, but in my heart, there was only stillness and resolve. I would not let our family's tragedy repeat. I would give Jaden the life he deserved. And I would honor the true meaning of family, not through blind indulgence, but through love and responsibility. That was the legacy I wanted to leave, not just for Jaden, but for my parents who loved us, however imperfectly. This whole experience, it changed me forever. It made me confront things I never wanted to, about my family, about forgiveness, about what it really means to protect the ones you love. So, let me ask you, if you found yourself in my shoes, having to choose between your brother and justice, what would you have done? Have you ever had to break a cycle of family pain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really love to hear what you think.